Hi again, this is Bev Holden. I'm with you from the LND Unconference up in Glasgow at the City of Glasgow College. This is the third Collaborate Live today, third and final, and I'm joined by Eleanor Gearwood. Eleanor is one of the delegates here at the Unconference today. So at the start of the day, we we gave people some space to post some questions that they'd like to have answered through the conference, through the Unconference, and or topics they'd like to explore. So Eleanor's topic made it onto the board, and she's ended up in the room with me now. And we do have an audience. Audience, make some noise. Okay, we've got an audience. The audience will listen to the conversation as it evolves and will no doubt post some questions and have some comments they'd like to throw in. As with the other Collaborate Lives today, if you've seen them, if you use the hashtag #LiveClive, you'll be able to follow that conversation in the back channel. And so, Eleanor, the question that you posed, and the question that if you're watching you've probably seen, is how do we encourage organisations to adopt emergent methods such as we're doing today? But we've talked about that probably not being the best place to start our conversation, because I think what we need to do is define what do we mean by emergent methods, and then probably move on to looking at where we've seen it done well, and I think the audience will probably have some examples. So, yeah, so that's where we'll start. So.
Well, I think today was definitely a really good example of emergent method. I mean, I think most of us, well, certainly those of us who hadn't actually been to an Unconference before, possibly weren't sure. I certainly wasn't sure what to expect today, but came, hoping that I'd learned something, and it's been a really, really good session. So it didn't start with an agenda and you knew what you were going to be doing at certain times of the day. It has just emerged through the participation of all of the delegates present, which keeps it really fresh and relevant. And I think today was a really, really good example of that. I'm also studying transactional analysis in Oxford, and it's the same similar sort of way that there's 10 of us on the programme. There's a theme around each of the weekends that we have, but otherwise it's the participants during those 3 days that make the workshop. And it's you spend longer talking on what's more relevant or useful for people, and less time on the other bits. We're saying, okay, we don't really want to spend too much time doing that. So it keeps you interested, and you go away with what you want rather than what someone else decides that you should have.
Yeah, it's a lot more adult. It's suggesting people are mature enough to learn for themselves and to draw the information that they need.
Yeah.
So thinking about some of the experiences you've had where those emergent methods have been adopted really easily, and from what you've seen today, is there something in particular that happens to create the conditions for it to work really effectively?
I think, as you said, it's about giving people the boundaries, the parameters in which to operate, but then allowing them to do whatever it is that they need to do at that time. So there are breaks at certain time, although these are a bit loose as well, and people feel free to express their views rather than what I've seen in other courses or conferences is where possibly not as many people actually participate for fear of looking stupid or going off subject, whereas here it's encouraged.
Yeah, because in those traditional conferences, the experts at the front of the room, you've got the guru at the lectern saying their thing, or you've got a panel talking about what they think is really important, and it's not always that inviting, whereas this is very equal. There's a real equality about the whole process.
Absolutely. And I think for most adults, that's where, or even kids actually, that's where they're going to learn best, when you're comfortable, when you're relaxed, rather than constantly judging what it is that you're about to say or to ask, or you leave having not asked a particular question that might have been very valid or useful to a lot of other people in the room as well. So here it's been very relaxed, and it's how do we encourage this sort of environment in the workplace? Because my experience is that most organisations, HR departments, L&D, they're looking for a process of what is it that you're bringing, and they want that quantifiable. What will people leave with at the end? And it's like, well, depends on who the people are in the room, and that doesn't particularly go down well.
No, there's no allowance for that variable, I suppose it has to be, there's an outcome and we will deliver whatever message or whatever development for those people to achieve that outcome. But then the outcomes here are very different and varied because, and possibly richer. I don't know. Are they richer because we don't have a defined outcome, so we can be more creative?
Yeah, and that was one of the topics today. It was about creativity and how that gets killed off for fear of failure, for fear of not actually being able to just go with the flow.
Yeah, Kate's got a question.
I've got a comment if that's okay.
Yeah.
We have an example of quite recently going into a very structured day that it was quite prescriptive, it had been very well laid out and lots of people had been involved in it. But after lunchtime, we had a couple of people approach and say, actually, can we do this instead? Because this is going to be really valuable to us. And so we said, yeah, great, let's go for it. And we did it. And at the end of the day, they went away with something that was really, really valuable, whereas it could have just been quite valuable in an all right day.
Yeah.
So I think possibly we'd set it up that we were quite open to do things a bit differently, and they grasped the nettle and they did it. So there is sometimes opportunity.
And I think
always happen.
And that came out of one of the discussions that we had earlier about in the room. Yes, you can be more emergent in the moment.
Yeah.
My comment, I suppose, is about how do you actually get through the front door of the organisation in the first place? If you're having to get through the gatekeeper of HR, L&D, etc., that says what is it that they are buying, and they're expecting you to quantify that. I suppose it's about return on investment. It's they will have to be measured against, was it useful? Did it actually do what they were expecting? And yet on the day, it's about having that complete freedom and permission to do whatever's necessary, which I still am not sure that most organisations give. So someone mentioned earlier, it's about it's that horse, go in there, a Trojan horse. Tell them what it is that they're looking for, and then give them something else. But should we have to do that?
Do you think if you work with your organisation in terms of what the question is, and if you spend a lot of time on the question, they're happy with the question, and they don't know what direction it's going to take, but they're happy with kind of where you're starting from, and they're a bit more comfortable?
Yeah, I'm sort of jumping around in my mind a couple of organisations I'm particularly thinking about, and they're mostly public sector. My experience is that they are looking for something which is quantifiable, and it may just be that I haven't been in Scotland that long, so maybe I haven't built up a strong enough relationship with these individuals for them to trust me to do whatever. So maybe that's part of it. So I'd be interested to get your views about, do you have experience of being allowed to be emergent in the workforce, in the types of businesses that you work in? Is it just that I'm seeing that I'm being restricted? Because I'd like to work more emergently, but I'm not comfortable that the number of the organisations I've spoken to in the last year would feel uncomfortable in that.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with someone where somebody talks about their particular product, if you like, is quite different. It's quite far removed from what we consider to be acceptable, not in an inappropriate way, just in the way that people understand L&D and development and people work. And he talks about meeting people where they are as that first step. So in terms of having a connection with those people and getting a real understanding of their issue and presenting your information about what you offer and what you're able to do for the organisation in a way that is in their language and that they understand and that makes sense to them based on, and it's very logical that we would do that. And then the skill that we have to develop is in moving that client's understanding from where they are now to what it could be based on the thing that we can do in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that in reality, but it sounds like a great concept.
Yeah.
You know, just meet them where they are, then take them. You sometimes you hear people speak about what they do, and it sounds very extreme, very different, very rebellious. And of course, an organisation that's quite risk averse won't go down that route.
Yeah.
But actually, if that person can change the way they position, the way they shape their message, not to manipulate, but just to meet that client where they are, and then help them move. It's kind of like guiding them and leading them by the hand, so that their comfort zone becomes more comfortable to be, or they extend outside that comfort zone and feel more comfortable. So I don't know whether that helps or hinders, but there's some gap to be bridged in terms of helping our clients to feel brave. So we had a conversation in the last session about when we collaborate with other people, it makes us braver.
Yeah.
When we trust each other and we share ideas and examples, you know. So in creating content, one of the things I've experienced is thinking, well, we could do that, but I'm a bit scared because it might go wrong. But when you test it out with another person who understands the work that you do, they can bring that confidence to the situation, so you feel braver and take more risk. Maybe there's something to be learned from that.
Yeah, sure.
There's also a reason on why you want to work in that way. I guess you've seen some really amazing results from it. So what place does that play in painting that really vivid picture of bringing your, you know, almost helping your clients to see why it's such an important way of trying to do things?
I think, as Beth said, it's about having that adult relationship. It's a bit like some of the kind of golden principles that we had earlier. It's about taking responsibility for your learning, and as the facilitator, if you like, it takes the pressure off of me. It's not about, you know, me having to be the centre of all knowledge or whatever. It's about encouraging the participants, the delegates, to take ownership for their own learning, to ask the right question, or not the right questions, but to ask the questions that they have and not wait to be spoon-fed. So, you know, I think I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been a participant on training courses where I've expected the facilitator to feed me, a bit like a sort of hungry chicken and egg. You know, feed me. I'm really enjoying all this. Give me some of those worms, and quickly learned that, maybe not so quickly from her eyes, quickly learned that the learning that I will sustain, you know, my sustained learning will happen through me doing it rather than somebody giving me the worm. And I think that this sort of more of an emergent type learning, as opposed to people giving you information, you know, sits, I don't know, from a neurological pathway. I'm sure someone here knows about how your brain works, but you know, it stays with us longer if we've actually had to do a bit of the work ourselves rather than just be fed.
If we've had to discover it, and I think then it's still possible to give the client something that they want in terms of getting the learners to an outcome that's required, a change in understanding, a level of new knowledge or discovery, but do it in a way that allows them to discover the information for themselves. So in terms of, it becomes less training and more facilitation. And I don't think organisations are averse to that. So I've not come across anyone who's really resisted that, I don't think. So I think there's
okay, well, clearly I'm going to the wrong clients.
Yeah, so I don't know. So I suppose I've been in situations where I've said, you know, this is the way we work, this is what will really help, and this will address this need.
Can I ask where you work? You work down south?
Down south from here, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so mainly in England.
So I think it's been a system basis encourages ownership of issue and ongoing development. I think there's often a fear within organisations from what may emerge. It may be that it, you know, paints a picture that the organisation itself doesn't want to see. So, you know, I think it does come back to the issue of regulation and the reason, you know, for the emergence in itself. So, you know, the issue and the questions that are posed around that are crucial. And you know, with that, there has to be sponsorship within the organisation for that approach. And I think a lot of successful organisations get a good blend between strategies and what may emerge. So we've got a very clear vision here, and very clear guidance on how we're going to reach that. But also we encourage emergence from within as well, and create a sort of balance between the two. And that can be incredibly powerful. I know that wasn't a question.
Okay. The choice. John, Teresa's asking if we can repeat what we're saying louder because we can't hear.
Ah.
You can either give a summary or
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. So you want me to say that? Oh my goodness. Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, just come closer. Cuddle in. You don't have to be on screen. Just come closer. Closer than that. Seriously, you're nowhere near the camera. You're fine. Just come closer, and then you can speak more loudly.
No, my comment was around ownership, and I think if you involve people, there'll be a greater sense of ownership and issue emerging with the organisation and so on. And with that, you need sponsorship for that, and I'm suggesting that successful organisations will get a balance between directed approaches and emergence from within. But it does come down to the support questions for me and reasoning. Why would you encourage emergence within the organisation? So taking that away from the training room and looking at a much later on, concept as well. So with that, I think it can be extremely powerful. Encourage whole system change. So if you get the balance, with sponsorship and buy-in, because I think there's a fear within organisations from what we emerge, and maybe not what the shareholders want to hear or the funding bodies want to hear, and may not relate to the particular outcome measures that they perhaps cover. So with that comes an apprehension, I think.
Yeah. Is that makes me think, is there an over-reliance and too much of an interest in measuring? Do I want to open that debate? Do we try and measure too much in learning and development and make it a fixed and finite thing? Like we're going, there are 20 oranges there, excellent, that'll make this much orange juice. And it doesn't, that's not how we learn in all my experience of learning myself. And
it depends on the dynamic of the individuals in the room on that day as to what's going to come out. And that might be different if you did it on a different day, even with the same group of people, depending on how people are generally feeling as to their contribution and what comes up for them.
There's massive amount of variability.
So the outcome changes, or could change quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that's really. But I think you're right about the sponsorship thing. You kind of need somebody in an organisation to be brave enough to know that they can let. It's about letting go of control, isn't it, to some extent, and not thinking that it's something that to get someone to behave differently. For example, the journey from where they are to where you want them to be isn't necessarily a straight line. So there's lots of wiggling and lots of going backwards, and then a bit more forwards. And then you might get to the behaviour, or you might get to even better behaviour. But then it makes any intervention that you shape or create, or any proposal you make, or any pitch you do, has to include some element of that. Has to get people to realise that the journey is not a linear one. Is there a question?
There was a question from Twitter. You can repeat it. So Brock Edwards says, random thought: would people learn even if L&D didn't exist?
So would people learn even if L&D didn't exist? Probably. Would it? Are we indispensable? Yeah, how can you not learn is a really good question. I think sometimes people need to learn how to learn. People need to understand that how to learn, unlearn, relearn, that they have that capacity, that their brains are capable of doing that.
And permission to learn.
Or recognise you're learning all the time, actually.
Or recognise you're learning all the time. Yeah, you have to recognise, and I think in some of our experiences we've noticed that people don't recognise that the moment that they're in contains learning for them.
And that goes back to a discussion that we had earlier about failure. How do we perceive, what does failure mean in our organisation or in the team that we work in, and are we allowed to fail? Which is this big question about, really, if you don't fail, are you learning? isn't that where we get our biggest learnings when we fail?
Yeah.
But it's that whole resilience piece about it, and how do we pick ourselves back up from that? You know, is failure catastrophic, as in we then just stop or we pull out, or do we go, hey, that was good, I learned lots from that, and then keep going? So yeah, so all of the subjects that we've spoken about today, they're all interlinked, and that's the really great thing about this, is that it has just emerged rather than, you know, it being so structured that it hasn't allowed time for proper discussion. Yeah, and it's the discussion piece. That's where the learning happens, is being open to hearing what people are saying and mulling around your own thoughts.
Yeah, and waiting for those moments of inspiration to arrive, because they will, and kind of allowing them in, and yeah, we don't always make space doing that, and I think that's what this environment really gives us an opportunity to do.
Yeah, and so it goes back to my original question, which is, maybe it's just my experience, but I have not experienced that many, if any, organisations that are willing to just allow their staff, their employees, time to play, which is basically what I think we've been doing today. I feel like, you know, we've been allowed to just play and experiment and to have some fun.
Yeah.
And do organisations, in your experience, do they encourage that?
So there's kind of a forced fun thing. So we're a fun and funky organisation, so we do wacky things with foosball and, you know, have comfy chairs in strange places. Yeah. So there's that kind of thing. Yeah. Google, for example. You know, yeah. And we're here courtesy of Google. Yeah.
But actually, this has probably come out of a day off that we've had to create.
So Kate's just said that this concept of what we're doing now has probably come out of people being allowed to play and being allowed to do things differently. So yeah, there's some forced play, and then there's letting people just play for real. But I guess if there are people out there who watch this, who are in those organisations, how would we articulate what it is we've gained from being here, from playing together today? What are those huge benefits that we've got? Because
to entice and encourage.
Yeah, to entice and encourage that actually play is okay.
I think the fact that people have been given choice, because it's not like you had to play. You could be a butterfly or a bee. I really liked that concept.
Yeah.
You could just flutter around the outsides and not actually participate in any of it if you just wanted to, you know, skim the outsides.
Yeah.
Or you can just pollinate and go from flower to flower or session to session. Go back to your question.
No, that's okay. So I was saying, how do we quantify right now? Because we're nearly at the end of the day. How do we quantify the huge benefit that we've got and put it in terms that is helpful for the people?
And I think, again, what came out of one of the discussions earlier was, and we may not know what that is today, but it might be in a week's time or in a month's time, that, you know, something has emerged later on after we've had time to digest and distill. And so, you know, the happy sheets that hopefully people have stopped doing, you know, you don't know at the end of a session how much people have actually learnt. It's not until they go in and actually start to use it that the real learning happens.
And I think that's a really good point, because we don't have thoughts in isolation. You know, our thoughts are fairly random and all over the place, and we connect one thing to another very random thing in a very random way. And so allowing that learning or knowledge to just sit with us gives us that opportunity to make the connections between it and another experience. So I think there's huge benefit in that. And that's what I think makes learning difficult to quantify, because of its random nature, and because what's going on in your head and how you're joining up all those thoughts right now is very different to what's happening in mine. So your experience of learning is different. So when you're stood at the front of a room and you've got a bunch of people, they're all, in fact, everyone in here is experiencing it differently. And you can't manage or control that because it's in someone else's head, which I think is kind of interesting.
It's interesting, and I'm not sure that we give enough time to consider that from an OD perspective. You know, organisations, in my experience, want to quantify. They want to have some sort of feedback on how their delegates found the day. You know, is it good, bad, or indifferent? And actually, they may not know then.
Yeah.
I'll come closer.
Kate's coming closer. Just bear with us while she appears. Okay. Oh, we don't think you had any sound then, so try again. No sound. You're going to have to come into shot.
Taking personal responsibility, because I'm just thinking about how we're all here. So if I look at everybody in the room, there's a lot of people here that go, not very engaging with this, but with other things, but it's been okay, because that's what you're allowed to do, you're allowed to interact and make the best of it for yourself. Whereas I can't imagine that you would possibly a formal experience would be thinking that this looks all right. It sort of looks like funky. It's about how get the best out of you and everybody's doing the same. So that's quite an interesting take on stage. It has been very much choice-based. You have to be in it. You have to dip into a conference call. You've got an interesting box. So that's quite a sort of a random factor of it, but people just knowing that you're here and you're going to make the most of it because you've chosen to be here.
Yeah.
It even possibly to some organisations that goes on.
How weird must it be for people watching, but to have us looking at the corner of the screen and there being nothing there? So I know that today I have changed my behaviour as a result of some of my experiences. Not in a big way. I am not transformed. I am not somebody completely different to who I was when I walked in. But I've already learned stuff and gone, you know what? That's going to make me do that next bit different, because I've had 3 goes at this today, and each time I've done something different. So I've learned. I've been a classic learner. I've taken on board something new, and I've gone, I'm changing my behaviour because of this. So is there anything that you think you've done today that is different?
Yeah, I think as Kate just mentioned, because in the last session I sat there and actually I was looking at my emails, but I was also participating because I could hear what everybody was saying quite clearly at the same time. And had I have been the true facilitator at the front of the room when somebody was doing that, I would have been pretty marked off. In fact, I probably would have at the start of the day had some sort of ground rules about what was acceptable, and that would have been totally unacceptable, you know, to be on my phone checking my emails. And yet, you know, I can verify that I felt as if I was participating as well as checking emails. So, yeah, so I've definitely learned that.
That it's possible to sometimes do those two things.
Yeah, that it's possible to be present in the room and actually to still just kind of, you know, flick through. Is there anything here that I really want to kind of answer right now? No. Fine. Okay.
You just open the floodgates of delegates everywhere to do their email in the middle of a training event. Are there any questions from the room at the moment? Anything on Twitter? No? Okay, that's fine. So are we any closer to answering the question, you think, in terms of how we encourage organisations? We've given them a bit of a window on our world, potentially. A little bit. I'm not sure we've quantified exactly. By the end of this, I think we'll have, not the end of this, but the end of the event, I think there'll be something there that really shows the value of getting people together in this way and doing things differently. And this is just a snapshot of that.
Yeah. I like the description at the beginning of the day about this being the most awesome tea break that you've ever had. And that's what it feels like, you know, because that is generally during conferences or events where you go along and you meet up with people at coffee break, and that's where a lot of the learning happens. I mean, often delegates come on training courses and it's the relationships that they've built up during the social time, and this is what it feels like, only it's been 8 hours long rather than, you know, a couple of 15 minutes.
Okay, it's been an awesome tea break.
It's been an awesome tea break. Yes, from
what,
what, 10 till 4. Oh, yeah, well, 6 hours of an awesome tea break.
Okay, good. So we're going to take stuff away. We're going to do things differently, but we may not know what those things are right now.
yeah, I think for me, I need some time to digest and just to leave that to kind of distill. I feel like it's been a really valuable day. The time has flown by, and it's 25 to 4, and you think, oh my God, I arrived here, what, 7 hours ago. It's gone really, really quickly. So, and I always think that's a good way of kind of measuring how in the flow or how in the moment I've been. So, yeah, for me, it's been a really good use of time, and I believe, I don't think I can quantifiably tell you what it is I've learned, but I believe that I've got a lot out of today, and that this emergent way of learning is a more connected, responsible way to learn rather than being taught. Yeah, rather than it being that sort of, as you say, facilitator at the front of the room, and you feel like you've got to sit there and pay attention when really you're nodding off and looking at your watch thinking, oh God, is it lunchtime yet? The day hasn't been like that at all. So yeah, let's do that.
Fantastic. I think on that note, we should bring Collaborate Live to an end. This has been the third of 3 in a day from the City of Glasgow College and from the Scotland LND-Connect Unconference. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for participating on Twitter. Thanks to the audience. Who I know you can't see, but they're obviously here because you've just proved that. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.